Awesome. Love that. Love that. All right. So we are going to move forward. And if guys, feel free to snap if you want to snap. The next question is on student ID laws. So as of January 2024, Texas, North Dakota, Ohio, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Idaho will not allow student IDs as an acceptable form of voter identification. Now, according to the Bloomberg opinion poll, trends indicate that young Americans are not seeking to get their driver's license, and they rely on their student ID as their main form of ID, right? So what should students do to ensure that they get their voices heard this election cycle and ensure that more legislation doesn't pop up across our nation that impacts young voters?
Yeah, many people don't realize that, the age was lowered for voting to 18 not that long ago. You're really talking about just a generation ago. And so since then, and even before then, there have been attacks on young people voting. And what we saw after 2020, again, there's a great data point, which is more young people are voting than ever before. So we saw the midterm election cycle right after 2016, an 11% jump in youth voting. That's gigantic. Usually we're talking about, 1% or point something percent increase and getting really excited. 11 percentage points was a huge tsunami of youth voters, which is great. And then we saw in the 2020 election, again, high youth turnout. And instead of meeting that moment with celebration and joy and excitement, we've seen certain states look to roll back the number of young people who are participating in elections. And so going after student IDs is definitely a very purposeful way of cutting certain people out of the electorate. And the point is to make people exhausted, to make people confused about how to participate, or to make people feel like they don't have the requirements to participate, and to exhaust people out of the system so that the numbers change. And I think that the thing to remember is this has been happening for a really long time. I mean, I'm not going to date myself and tell you exactly what year, but when I was in college, I was in school in upstate New York, and we had a polling location on campus my first year. It was really easy to vote. I voted right away, was really excited. And then they moved the polling location to across a town where most of the college students didn't have transportation to get to, and there wasn't a public mass transit system in that town, and on purpose to lower the number of young people participating, because when young people participate, then politicians have to listen to them. And I think that the way people can continue to participate now is in the face of student ID rollbacks. In the face, people have to just continue to engage. Go to Vote.org, look at what the laws in your state are, plan your vote early. So know what your voting plan is going to be, and say, okay, here's what I need to do. I either have X, Y, and Z requirement. I've got to meet it. We've got to get to the DMV, got to get this license, whether I'm driving or not, but need it now to vote. Look at other forms of ID that particular state will take, and pay really close attention. I think that if we pay attention just right before the election, then you can get caught flat-footed. And the idea is to overcome and be able to participate in spite of these laws, and then eventually elect politicians who will change these laws. I think the fight for democracy is going to recenter in some of these states and be a statewide fight. We also need federal legislation, but there's going to be a policy fight at the state level. But to do that, we have to have people in place that feel accountable to young people. So I think that's the biggest thing. And I have a good friend, Rashad Robinson, who's at Color of Change, who says that politicians need to be afraid to disappoint you. So when it comes to getting the laws in place, we really need to have full access for younger generation. We have to have politicians in place that are afraid to disappoint. So I think at the end of the day, it's about continuing to showing up, showing people that you're being targeted and you're not going to let it stand.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about pushing the youth to mobilize, because what a lot of these lawmakers fail to realize is that young adults will one day become adults. And if you have stripped them of their right to access the polls, they're not going to forget that. They're going to remember that. So if anything, a lot of these lawmakers are setting an electoral expiration date on their own terms. I think it's really important that, as you said, that a lot of student voters and young adults look ahead if it's possible, because a lot of the time, poll workers, especially in smaller, more rural communities, lack the education needed to kind of know how to handle certain things. Like they're used to things, as I said before, like those familiar faces that show up time and time again. They know that they're not going to have any issues with them. But if they do have someone who shows up and is like, well, I don't have an ID because I'm a student, not quite yet, but I have other forms of identification, sometimes they don't know that. And even though you're entirely in the right, come prepared, come with documentation, come with a printout from the state website, wherever you may be, just demonstrating that, yes, this is in fact something I'm able to use. And they may not necessarily know, but that doesn't mean you're wrong. So I think there's a lot of power to be had in knowledge. There's a lot of power to be had in joining together. And this is something that I think that a lot of young adults and student voters could also connect with other marginalized identities over, because when it comes to inability to access certain things to demonstrate who we are to these poll workers, there are other communities that are going through that too, and we are always stronger in numbers. So I think, yeah, a lot can go with education, but also just persistence and just engage, stay involved as much as you can.
Download My Balbo now on Apple and Google Play stores to watch the full episode of Democracy Downloaded, or to start your own roundtable. My Balbo, the home for the next generation of changemakers.